The biggest IPO of the year surges on opening, with Guzman Y Gomez's share price closing up 30% on day one. The cold snap along the East Coast threatens to disrupt energy supplies, and shopping at Aldi, as opposed to Coles or Woolworths, could save shoppers 25% on their grocery bill. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Friday, the 21st of June, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, Guzman Y Gomez hit the ASX yesterday, and it sure found plenty of friends, with its share price surging more than 39% on opening before finishing up 36%.
The listing price is $22. It jumped to $31, or almost $31, before closing at $30 a share, meaning its market capitalisation pushed above $3 billion. What's that mean? Well, Domino's Pizza, which has a much, much larger footprint and longer history, it's worth about $3.3 billion. That's a pretty successful opening day for Guzman Y Gomez. The fast food group has just 185 outlets, but it's got big plans to hit 1,000 stores and push into North America. When it hit the bourse at noon, CommSec data suggested there were more than 1,500 buyers, presumably mostly retail investors, ready to purchase when trading began. Now, those buyers were bidding for about 194,000 shares. Only about 44,000 shares were on offer. Hugely oversubscribed. It is the biggest IPO on the ASX since APM Human Services back in late 2021. It's got a strong management team, or analysts like their management team. They also like the idea of this acceleration in store openings. It's profitable at a store level, so therefore it has many friends. At least it did on day one, though this is definitely not a sprint. It is a marathon. There were plenty of other people happy to see Guzman do pretty well outside shareholders, simply because we just haven't had many listings on the ASX. So the fact that the big one for this year came on, jumped, $8 on opening, people were pretty happy with that.
Yeah, it was a big day, wasn't it? And another thing actually happening yesterday, the Van Eck Bitcoin Exchange Traded Fund also launched. How did that go?
Well, there was much less fanfare about that one, but what happened as a result of the Van Eck ETF is probably more influential than the Guzman float for more investors. Van Eck's ETF is the first for the ASX, and the cost to trade was 0.59 of 1%, 59 basis points. That's cheap. Now, Global X, a competitor, also has a crypto ETF, one for Bitcoin, one for Ethereum, but it trades on Cboe, which is a much smaller competitor to the ASX, more difficult to access that one. There's also a group called Monochrome Asset Management. It's got a Bitcoin ETF as well. Global X yesterday morning cut the cost of its trades from 125 basis points to 59 basis points, matching Van Eck. Suddenly, it's very cheap to buy these cryptocurrency ETFs. The development of crypto ETFs has put some real competition into that market. That's lowered the trading prices. That probably has more long-term implications in many ways than the actual Guzman float, because it makes trading in crypto ETFs cheaper and certainly more accessible now that they're on the ASX.
All right, now we talked a lot about Guzman Y Gomez, but more broadly, how did local markets perform yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 closed down 0.3% to 7,769 points, dragged lower by healthcare and tech stocks. The property sector did best. Once again, it wasn't a particularly busy day apart from the Guzman float. Among the large caps, Transurban, Coles, CSL and Macquarie Group were some of the worst performers. Aristocrat Leisure, Suncorp and Commonwealth Bank, some of the best. There was some good news for Telstra's 1.3 million shareholders. Its share price hit a 4-week high, though it's still down about 11% since early February. In corporate news, the price of Drone Shield shares hit a new record. They're up 575% over the past year after it said it had won a contract to supply counter-drone hardware to a Swiss customer. Sounds very cloak and dagger, that, doesn't it?
It does. It feels like the kind of deal that needs to be done at night.
And actually, I think they said a Swiss customer, but it was a non-government Swiss customer. Makes it even a bit more intriguing.
Oh my God, I bet they left the drones in a vault somewhere.
Yeah. You think so? Very Jason Bourne or
James Bond. It doesn't take much for us to get back onto James Bond on this podcast, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Well done.
Finally, on markets, best performer on the ASX 200 was mortgage broker Helia. It pretty much reversed all of Wednesday's decline after it flagged a potential lending deal with the Commonwealth Bank. It was up 16%.
All right, let's check international markets. Thanks to Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate, and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au. Much happening, Sean?
Well, I mean, the US had a holiday yesterday, but there was some really good news, or good economic news out of the United Kingdom, with inflation hitting the Bank of England's 2% target last month. It means headline inflation in the UK is now below the Eurozone, the US, and Australia. But services inflation remains higher than expected. Sounds a bit familiar to Australia, doesn't it? It's all good news for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who is very much struggling to turn around his wayward election campaign. A poll in the Telegraph this week predicts that Mr Sunak could become the first sitting Prime Minister to lose their seat at a general election. It's forecasting Labor could win 516 seats in the Parliament, compared to the Conservatives' 53.
Oh, that would be a landslide.
That is more than the West Australian election a couple of years ago was something similar to that. But for a national election, that would be a phenomenal result.
Oh, that's quite extraordinary.
It is. And just before we leave markets, Brent crude's a touch lower, gold's a touch higher, and the Aussie dollar's buying 66.7 US cents.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, today is a very special day. Today is the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. And
very exciting.
It is, but it is also winter, which means it is cold along the east coast of the country at the moment. And alongside a lack of renewable power generation, there is a risk of gas shortfalls hitting energy supplies.
The Australian Energy Market Operator has issued a threat notice warning of the potential for gas supplies to run short at peak times. The regulator said New South Wales, Victoria, the ACT, South Australia and Tasmania could be affected, and the risk lasts until September. The shortage demonstrates the lack of investment in gas in recent years, in part because of government interference, and also the need for gas to be an interim power source in the transition to renewable energy. Part of the problem, according to the gas industry, is the low amount of renewable generation, particularly around wind. In the past 3 days, average renewables power generation in the electricity market generated 21%, only 21% of the energy used in Victoria. The rest has to come from somewhere.
Sean, just staying in the energy sector, there was more fallout. It's one of those kind of, you need to say those things, don't you?
You have to. You can't stop yourself. Yeah.
Like if you're going to talk about the nuclear energy debate, if you don't say fallout, then you're disgracing yourself. But there was more fallout yesterday.
There sure was. Opposition leader Peter Dutton's announcement of 7 sites to build nuclear power generators by 2050 has certainly grabbed the headlines, but the consensus view seems to be that what's being proposed can't be done. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called the nuclear policy a fantasy. ACT Independent Senator David Pocock said the policy was reckless and unrealistic. Tasmanian Senator Jackie Lambie said nuclear energy should be in the mix, but she hasn't yet formed a clear view on the coalition's policy. For his part, Peter Dutton warned Australians not to be taken in by Labor's scare campaign on nuclear power, and 2 reactors could plausibly be off the ground by 2035.
Sean, I mentioned this one at the top of the show. Shopping at Aldi can save customers about 25% compared to buying at Coles and Woolies. This is according to consumer group Choice.
Based on a basket of 14 commonly bought grocery items, including milk, bread, sugar, tea bags, fresh fruits and veggies, Choice used undercover shoppers, very exciting, to record prices from 81 supermarkets across the country. Also, that included a few IGA stores. The cost at Aldi was $51.51. At Woolies, it was $68.58, and at Coles, $69.33. Now, when specials that were available were applied, Woolies fell to $64.93, well below Coles, but nowhere near as low as Aldi. Broadly, Aldi's cheapest, and there's not much difference between Woolies and Coles. Now, while the data is a bit scarce on IGA, it does appear to be more expensive. Among the major states, Western Australia is the most expensive. Somewhat surprisingly, capital cities are slightly more expensive than regional centres, according to Choice. This is all part of the federal government's $1.1 million package it gave to Choice to check supermarket prices quarterly. It's come out saying Aldi's a lot cheaper.
It's on my bucket list, did you know, Sean, to be a mystery shopper.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think I'd be a really good mystery shopper. I'm one of those people that just kind of, Well, I don't stand out when I'm there, when I'm in a shop. I think I just
Are you trying to?
no, I just kind of blend into the background, and that's what you're supposed to do, I suppose. When you need to just look like you're just a regular Joe, just there, just doing the groceries.
Just doing the groceries.
It is my goal.
Oh, Michael, I don't know where to go with that.
No, I don't think you need to go anywhere. I'm just putting it out there into the universe in the hope that maybe a mystery shopper company will be listening and will contact me and let me fulfill my dream. Sean, there's a bit going on in the commercial property sector with two big players, Mirvac and Dexus, writing down the value of buildings.
We talked a fair bit about this last year. The value of many commercial buildings have fallen post-COVID. Because of work from home, is cold demand for office space. Owners have held on to the assets. They don't really want to sell them in a down market. Deal flow has been negligible in that market in the past 18 months, but ultimately they have to be revalued. Sometimes they have to sell them. Yesterday, Dexter said it would lower the valuations of its office properties by 11% this financial year. Mirvac, it said it was going to sell a 34-storey office tower in Melbourne CBD and an 11-storey building in North Sydney for a combined 20% discount to peak values. That is really taking a haircut.
Yeah, sure is. Sean, more than half of all Australians don't expect to fully own their own home by the time they retire, and a similar proportion think that they will outlive their retirement savings.
A survey by Vanguard shows that 1 in 5 Australians are renting in retirement, and 30% expect to still be paying a mortgage in retirement. Vanguard Australia Managing Director Daniel Shrimsky calls it a sleeper issue because most forecasts for retirement assume no housing debt. But that's not actually the reality for the majority of retirees. They're either paying rent or still paying the mortgage. The 2024 How Australia Retires research shows that 40% of Australians have no clear plan for retirement, and about half the population don't know how much they pay in superannuation fees. Increasingly, Australians are worried that their money won't last in retirement, with 80% of Australians somewhat or very worried about running out of money. Mr. Shrimsky says the research shows that planning and having access to a financial advisor gives Australians a better chance at a successful retirement. But still, that might be true, but still the most popular source of retirement income information and guidance? Free online sources such as Google.
Sean, after the show, you have an interview coming up with Daniel Shrimsky, Managing Director of Vanguard Australia, to really kind of get into these findings.
Yeah, we get into the nitty-gritty of what's being said. It's actually a bit of a scary interview if you just think of the lack of preparedness for retirement for so many people. So it is well worth a listen, even if it just prompts you to do something yourself about saving for the future. And this isn't something that for 60-year-olds or 55-year-olds, it's something for 25-year-olds as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wake-up call overall. Now, Treasury Wine Estates boss Tim Ford has warned it will take 3 years to rebuild the company's business in China, despite a surge in sales of its flagship Penfolds brand since authorities lifted tariffs last month.
Profits at its Penfolds business were expected to grow about 15% this financial year. However, the cost of restarting a once lucrative trade to China will cut into margins. Treasury is also lifting prices on July 1 on its top-tier products, Bin 128, Bin 389 and Bin 407s, by an average of about 6% across all markets. Mr. Ford said Penfolds would not return to the profits it had recorded before the imposition of higher tariffs by officials in China until 2027, according to a report in the Fin Review. But growth in premium and luxury wine categories was still outstripping those of the lower-cost product lines.
And Mineral Resources is shutting down its high-cost iron ore mines in the Yilgarn region of Western Australia, affecting 1,000 workers.
The group said it will try and deploy as many workers as possible in its other iron ore and lithium mines in the state. Mineral Resources made the decision to focus on its more promising iron ore sites, including in the Pilbara, where last month it loaded its maiden shipment bound for China. Over the past week, the group's also agreed to purchase iron ore assets in the Pilbara region from BCI Minerals. The company said the decision to close the Yilgarn mine had been influenced by a combination of factors, including the limited remaining life of the 5 operating mines spread over 220 kilometres and the significant capital cost and lead time required to develop new resources to ensure continuity of supply.
Okay, turning to international news now, and energy demand is growing faster than renewables output, meaning greenhouse gas emissions from energy hit a record high last year as demand for fossil fuels rose, despite a big increase in renewable power.
A bit worrying this. Energy emissions increased 2% in 2023 to exceed 40 gigatons of carbon equivalent for the first time, according to the Energy Institute's statistical review of world energy. The group said clean energy is still not even meeting the entirety of demand growth. So on that basis, you can arguably say the energy transition hasn't actually started yet, according to a report in the Financial Times. Fossil fuel use accelerated in high-growth countries such as India, but there were signs demand had reached a peak in Europe, the US, and other advanced economies. Fossil fuels' share in the energy mix dipped slightly, but it's still at 81.5% of total energy use. Still a long, long way to go.
Yeah, it sure is. Finally, Sean, the boss of Boeing, says that he understands concerns about the safety culture at the aircraft manufacturer, but action is being taken and progress made to turn things around.
Yes, a man under fire. The company has been under the spotlight since an unused door fell off a brand new 737 MAX plane during a flight operated by Alaska Airlines, leaving a hole in the aircraft. Since then, whistleblowers have told the US Senate that the 737 MAX, the 787 Dreamliner, and the 777 models have all had serious production issues. Boeing boss Dave Calhoun, appearing before the Senate, said he understands the gravity of the situation, and he also apologised for accidents involving 737 MAX aircraft 5 years ago. Maybe. Investors aren't convinced. Boeing's share price is down 30% this year.
Okay, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. As we mentioned before, you're speaking with Daniel Shrimsky from Vanguard.
All about saving for retirement and just the need to do something sooner rather than later. Like, do it today. Don't wait.
Yeah, it is a good listen. It is up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is where you can also sign up for the Fear and Greed weekly newsletter, the free weekly newsletter, I might add, Sean. If you pop your email address in, you will get it next Wednesday morning when it comes out. This week's newsletter. Spectacular response to it this week, Sean.
Is that right?
Yes, I really enjoyed it. No, it was a very, very good read. Great to see hear your views on a lot of stories, because often, really, on these shows, you do tend to stick to the facts. In the newsletter, we hear what you really think, and sometimes it can be a little bit controversial.
Maybe.
Little bit spicy. All right, thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
It is Friday, the 21st of June, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.